Okay, cool. We're ready. Yeah, thanks for agreeing to do the interview. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what your whole interviewing process was like.
Hi, my name is Malik. I got a bachelor's in computer science from Riverside, UC
Mhm.
Riverside. And then I worked in the aerospace industry as a dev for about 6 months, realized it wasn't too exciting to me. And I always knew I wanted to work at a major tech company. And so luckily got also an acceptance into UCLA grad school for computer science
Mhm.
master's. And that's where I really took advantage. So I really went into research and explored that area.
Mhm.
And I just realized, although I almost published a paper, I just realized I couldn't do that for 5 years
Mhm.
for a PhD. And so elsewhere, I looked at teaching, and so I did a TA-ship. Um, and that was actually really rewarding. I learned a lot about leadership and just how to lead and teach folks,
Mhm.
and that led to a professor adjunct adjunctship at Santa Monica College,
Mhm.
and so I did that for a couple of years. But the thing that really kind of took my career or launched my career was a class project at UCLA, which was
Mhm.
an interdisciplinary course, and it was just about solving a problem in the health space. And
Mhm.
so my group was attacking physical therapy. And so that turned into one thing led to another. It turned into a full blown startup. So
Mhm.
we got accepted into Techstars, and I did that for about 4 years.
Mhm.
And that's literally was my first major job. And so I
Mhm.
had to really build a product top to bottom, all the layers of the stack,
Okay.
infrastructure, IT, everything involved as a founding technical member. And so after that, I realized that we weren't making as much progress as we would have liked. And I needed to find a way to really support my family. And so that's where I looked outward and started applying to jobs. And so first time around, I ended up interviewing at a bunch of different places, um, Google, Amazon,
Mhm.
a couple others, and then also Goldman Sachs. And so they came out of nowhere, reached out, I interviewed. Actually, that was the only acceptance I got. And so uh, then I worked there, and that was about, I was hired in the middle of the pandemic or the start of the pandemic. So I was there for about a year and realized that I just wanted to be in the tech industry, not so much the finance industry. And so that's where I uh, started back the job search again, as painful as it was to do again. I really wanted to find a job in Silicon Valley or any of the major tech hubs, since the Goldman Sachs gig was in Salt Lake City. And so earlier, the start of this year is basically when I started studying and everything. That's when I reached out to you, Edbert, and that's how this whole thing started.
Yeah, that was a little long, but basically the short version is you basically had a startup, went to Goldman Sachs, and then you basically have about, let's say, call it 3, 4 years of experience until this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty accurate.
Okay. Yeah. So then, let's talk a little bit about like your interviewing process before and how you studied. So I think going back over my notes, I noticed that a lot of it revolved around you not being really concise or, overthinking a lot of the, how to say it, a lot of the problems, trying to kind of memorizing answers. Kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of like how you used to study before you met me.
Yeah, I really made an effort to try to study smart, uh, but even then, I was working on the groking patterns. That really did help a lot, and then also just leak coding. but the leak coding I was doing at that point wasn't very strategic. It was just jumping into a company's medium level problems and just doing all of them. Other than that, I don't think I had much strategy. And so I ended up feeling like I was just burning myself out without a direction or a North Star and with my studying.
That makes sense. I think it's a common problem with a lot of people. They think they can just like, leak code their way into actually, getting an offer. But then I think you realize pretty quickly that wasn't the case. So I know we spent a lot of time once we actually got started with the long-term coaching. I spent a lot of time talking about like, a few basic principles, like explaining things like you were five and really trying to do things logically. What were the other lessons that you kind of like remember from us talking a lot?
Let's see. A major thing was being clear about your thoughts and making that very evident to the interviewer. I remember just like there were points where I would just start rambling, and it wouldn't make sense, or I would make mental leaps that wouldn't make sense if someone else was following me. And so I would remember where you would be like, where the fuck did you get that step from? Or how did you draw that conclusion? And so that made me really think in terms of a sequential pattern. And really it highlighted the gaps in my like thinking process as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we've covered both system design and leak code and data structures and algorithms. I guess in your particular view, did you feel like the things we learned in the data structures and algorithm stuff applied to system design, or what was your take on that?
The high level structure is the same, where you're given a problem and you need to assess the problems or the sub problems, I guess, and need to attack it in a piecemeal way, I suppose. But in terms of data structures and systems design, what's the correlation? The one thing that I remember a lot from you is solving one problem, the most immediate and pressing prioritized problem. And then if another issue crops up, then you attack that after. But I can't think of a concrete example of that right now, but I do remember a lot of that pattern being used.
Yeah, like for instance, I think I gave you the design battleship problem, and I think you kept making like weird jumps in logic and design. But what you're saying is that it's pretty much the exact same thing where you have to walk through it logically and address like a lot of the concerns that arise from certain implementations.
Right. Yeah. And so like a lot of that type of thinking actually helps me a lot nowadays, just in my own work, because with leak coding, the problem with that is that like once you do a problem, you kind of remember it and you kind of remember the strategy of it. And so if your strategy is just to do as many leak code problems, that's gonna require you to have a pretty good memory. I myself don't have the best memory. I actually have pretty shitty memory actually. And so whenever I would see a new problem, I would not have a strategy because I did not have, say, a particular template or pattern to apply it against. And so this kind of thinking where you kind of break it down systematically in taking those steps allowed me to kind of navigate a large proportion of problems without having ever been exposed to it before.
Nice. Yeah, and I think we basically started from almost zero, I think, when we were focusing on your system design stuff. Is that right?
Yeah. So like what I would say about that is it's from the interview standpoint, it was basically zero. Like I did not have any experience with it. Now, like cursory knowledge, having dabbled in AWS or GCP and and knowing what the components were, I have built systems. But now, having gone through this, I've realized that there's a lot more nuance, and a lot more to consider, when designing out systems. And so, having gone through this, it made me a lot more mindful.
And a lot of the stuff that we talk about for like thinking about problems and data structures and systems, like you said, carry over to your work. These things don't fundamentally change. So a lot of the value that you got out of studying this also is going to help you in your career. At least I hope you've seen that.
Yeah, yeah, already. I feel a lot more confident in how I approach problems, and it's not just so much regurgitation anymore.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about like the whole interview story. So we've basically the structure of what we were doing was we were meeting like once a week, and then we would just like go over like your problem solving and then do like a few check-ins. Give us a timeline about like when you actually started interviewing. I think it was like 6 to 8 weeks into our sessions. I think that's when you started doing the phone screens. And we're basically
Yeah,
aiming for like a L4 position for you because you were at L3 at Goldman, correct?
I think so. I was like the top of entry level.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if that's L3, yeah. So yeah, we're trying to aim for L4, L5. Like L5, if it was just like if I was having a really solid like couple months of prep, uh, but that's really hard to do. So it was more realistic that I would be shooting for L4.
It's just to tease the audience, like let's go straight to final results before we talk about the process. What were all the results and offers that you got and at what level?
Yeah, yeah, actually. So with Nerdwallet, I got an offer from them, and that was for a senior level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for Amazon, that I got an offer, and that was like upper entry level. I don't know what they call it.
Okay.
And then for Box, I got a senior level offer from them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then where else? I got rejections from Google, Facebook. Um, where else? I got an offer from Tesla, and that was senior level. So I think that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically we were aiming for an L4 level, but we hit like L5 on 3 companies.
Yeah, yeah, I was very pleased with that, and it was just, yeah, the level of comfort I was in with all the prep work we did, it started becoming second nature, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that it just showed through the experience as well.
Yeah, awesome.
Because that's one thing I just didn't feel the first time around in my job search. I was kind of just trying to get a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're the first time around, you're just trying to break into the industry, and so the nerves get to you. But had I reached out to a coach beforehand, I think I would have gone straight to L4 at least. And so without that, like, yeah, they're definitely recruiters are definitely gonna try to get you at a good price for them. And so I feel like that's kind of what happened the first time around.
That makes sense. It's like they're on your side, but they're also like trying to get the best deal for you and the company at the same time. Um, and so like,
Right, which is
mhm,
which is kind of like, well, like what they usually say is like, yeah, we want to bring you in at this position because we want to ensure that you have a positive trajectory in the company, which I think is kind of bull because you want to, sure, there's validity to that, but then there's also, you're kind of just underestimating that person, even if they have that drive. And so for me, Amazon was actually doing that as well to me. And so I feel like it's a large company thing, maybe. But also, spoiler alert, but I accepted the job at Box. Also because they just gave me a lot more responsibility, and I feel like they celebrated me a lot more. Um, and so that was one of the big reasons why I ended up choosing them.
That totally makes sense. I remember us talking about like the work-life balance and you wanting to still work on your startup while working for them. Yeah. So I kind of
Yeah.
want to dig into like a little bit of the results and timelines. I think based on the schedule, I think we were trying to use like Nerdwallet and a bunch of these other companies in order to try and build up your interviewing practice with actual live companies. But we also got a reject from Google and Facebook. Let's dig into the reasons why we may have gotten rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for Google, um, that I failed a phone interview. So that was my first time around. I went straight to the on-site, and I feel like from the first results, I don't think I did. So the coding aspect, I didn't really impress them too much. I got past them, like I got solutions, but they weren't Google level. But in terms of the Googliness, they said that was just passed with flying colors. And so the second time around, I thought this was going to be in the bag. And for some reason, I just had that off day. And I'm sure you remember that too. And I was just scheduling a lot of interviews. That was, I think, the problem. That was the outcome of that. The fact that I just I think I interviewed around like 12 different companies or so.
Yeah.
And so there was just like first rounders, like 2 or 3 first rounders a week. And so yeah, I just botched a simple sliding window problem. And I showed it to you, and you were able to figure it out in front of me. And then I kind of just realized that yeah, I just wasn't in the right state of mind, and you kind of need that space mentally as well. You can't just like go balls to the wall to just get every single offer you can. So that was Google. That was early in the job search, and then Facebook the last week. And the last week I was absolutely trashed mentally because that was about like 9 or 10 weeks in to studying like crazy and interviewing like crazy. Yeah, I did interviews for a good 8 weeks. And so by then I was like, I totally crushed the first round. But when the on-site came, I was basically useless mentally.
Yeah. So basically, it just boiled down to like you were just burning out on those days more than the technical ability or anything else.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I think it's a pretty common problem with people who like giga study and try to schedule everything at once. Pavlo had the exact same experience where he just like burnt out on one of the days and then just like failed them. So I guess the lesson to take away here is like to really be mindful of like the amount of energy you can expend. It's not about like trying for a bunch of different companies. It's about like hitting a very good few targets.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what I've told myself. Like if I were to do this, not that I'm planning to, but if I were to do this, now I know how to make this more concise in terms of there were a few companies I could have just like omitted off my list. And at that time, I just wanted to add them all so I could get a bunch of exposure so that by the time I got to the last few, I'd totally kill them. But now that I know, I would probably just shorten that list to about 6 companies and then really just handle it all in a matter of like a month and a half max, 6 weeks max for interviews, maybe a month and a half of prep, and just call it that. So in 1 quarter, just have it done.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just be as concise as possible about it, and so that you don't end up doing like a bunch of random stuff and burning energy. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to go talk a little bit about like what we did in between like interviews. I remember we had a lot of what's called feedback sessions where you would try to talk to me about like what you did right and wrong on these particular interviews. Did you feel that was like useful?
Yeah, no, that was, yeah, absolutely. Of course. And that's why I was working with you
Mm-hmm.
for. It was that feedback, it was that honest feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And there were points where you would just come in and you would gauge my progress with respect to the dates we had, the
Mm-hmm.
interview dates we had. And so I had comfort in knowing that you were watching out for me, you
Mm-hmm.
were watching out for my progress and making sure if I was ahead or on time or behind
Mm-hmm.
in my progress, that you would adjust it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And also if I was veering towards the wrong direction in certain strategies,
Mm-hmm.
you would course correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the beginning, I felt a lot of that in terms of just how I would approach problems. So in terms of like writing pseudocode
Mm-hmm.
or drawing problems out,
Mm-hmm.
those were foundational pieces to my approach that had I not gotten them in the beginning, I would have probably veered off and not have achieved what I have gotten so far. And so I think having those adjustments early on made a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a continuous process, you know. It's not like, oh, I just give you one assignment and then you're good. It's like you have to constantly, it's like a doctor's appointment, you know. It's like you have to constantly keep checking up, making sure you're on the right track and making sure that we're doing the right things. And if we need to, you know, adjust in case you're overreacting or underreacting to certain things.
And also, you didn't even throw all that at me. It was just like very surgical too. It was 1 week. Let's focus on this. Let's get the drawings in, and then get good at that. Take that week to just practice on that, and then we'll work on another skill the next week. So it wasn't all just, all right, we have like 4 weeks. We need to get all this done. It was just like, let's make sure step by step, make these improvements and make sure that we're not regressing in any of these skills as weeks go by, but we're just adding bit by bit to my procedure or my approach to problem.
Yeah. Were you surprised at how quickly we made progress, or did you feel like it could have been better, or like what was your feeling throughout the entire thing?
I think the limitation is just a person's ability to learn, right? And for it to stick. So I think for me, it was just right. That it wasn't also having a job to juggle and a startup to juggle. I think for me, that was just right. The weekly cadence. I practiced every day, basically 5 days out of the week. And so had it been a little quicker, had you thrown down maybe one more topic, I think it would have been stretching me too thin, but that was just right what we did.
Yeah, I'm glad that it actually I fine tuned it pretty well. About how many hours a week would you say you were practicing? Because some people only really are able to dedicate, 20 additional hours. How many hours were you working? And how many hours were you studying for?
Yeah, to be honest, I think your schedule had me doing like 4 hours a day. I think I was doing like 2.5. And so like I would just do an hour and a half in the morning and then an hour or hour and a half after work. Beyond that, I didn't have much time or the brain space to do so. But yeah.
Yeah, so this was...
And on the weekends, like that, I wasn't doing much either. We would just meet up on Saturday. That would be my day to like really assess where I'm at. But I know people make a lot of progress on their off days, the whole Saturday. But for me, I just, I tried to approach it in a way where I could just take off a piece every day, just bit by bit.
Gotcha. So on the so just to clarify, it was 2-3 hours a day, even on the weekends. You didn't really spend that much time on the weekends, like some 7-8 hours.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
Okay. So yeah, overall, you were basically spending about like 15 hours a week on just studying for coding interviews.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so it's like that's surprisingly like not a lot of time. I think most people really expect like some crazy amount of effort in a very short amount of time. But then you're
Yeah.
able to prove that it doesn't really take that long as long as you're putting in good, consistent effort.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be intentional. You have to really, yeah, come with intention, and have a very steady recurring schedule. And for me, it's like every day at the same time, same place. I would wake up, just get ready kind of, and then just go straight to my study room, and I would just bang out like a couple problems. It would just be a couple too, from EPI. And then sometimes we would meet later in the day and I would explain my progress to you, and then do a couple more problems in the evening. But like doing those problems within the same category for the whole week was a major thing, because it kind of just kept my mind in that zone. And then my mind would just subconsciously think about it and play around with that problem and pattern for a whole week. And that's what helped me like have it stick in my head.
Yeah, being able to just like set time aside very specifically for this, because other people might like spend an hour on a problem and then jump around to like maybe playing a game and then coming back to the problem. You were very focused and consistent.
Yeah. I don't like to get all this done. I've required to have just like focus, and you just got to schedule it out. You got to look at your schedule and block off those times, and you just got to stick to them.
Were your practice habits like any different than before you had met me, or was it mostly the same?
The log.
Yeah,
the
logs.
log. So I didn't have the log. So having that spreadsheet was really helpful in terms of just understanding how quick I would approach problems. So like the log, I think, broke down in terms of how fast I did certain points, like the intro or the coding part, or explain like I'm 5. I would just like there would be like tick marks of like steps I did and forgot to do. So then I would see trends in what I was in my approach. And so it really helped me with the approach part and getting that down. But also another thing was the fact that I really liked, and I don't know if you do this with everyone else, but I would put, how we created that document where I would put all my solutions in there and then you would look at them. I got a lot of comfort in knowing that you were looking through my solutions that I was working on every day. And so then if there was something glaring or a red flag is something that you noticed in any aspect of these solutions, I knew you would bring it up, and then I would be able to course correct, even though I'd be working on my own. And so like this feedback loop was asynchronous, but I knew it was still working.
Right. It's like I could still give you feedback even if we weren't like meeting that day, and I could like slip you a few notes. I guess to clarify for people who are watching this, what exactly is this log that you are talking about?
Yeah, and which one, the solution log or just the spreadsheet?
That's the solution log. Yeah, the one that you were referring to. Well, I guess you could describe both because I had you keep both of them. So.
Yeah. So I'll start with the doc, like the Word doc, basically, which was every single time I completed a problem, I would do it on the computer. I wouldn't write it down, and I don't think there's any use to writing them down anymore. I feel like as long as interviews are now going to be virtual or computer based, so I would do it in a text editor, and then I would take that everything I would write into a Google Doc, and it would just be labeled with the date and the name of the problem and then the solution I had. And I just kept doing that every day. And I would populate it. And so that would just be one reference point for you to come in and just look at the problems and how I was approaching them. So you had a clear window into my mind. And so that's the Word doc. And then the spreadsheet was just, let's see. So one column was just the name of the exercise, the amount of time it took, did I complete it? Was I able to get it within like 20 minutes or so? Like a yes or no, success metric, comments, like what I felt like I did right, what I felt did wrong, and stuff like that. And so that was just another quick kind of index for us to look at in terms of the progress that we were making. And so I ended up making like, I don't know, 50 entries into that, or 50 problems over the course of the job search. But yeah, that was another major resource for us.
Yeah. So like having to keep track of like the problems that you do and then really thinking back and reflecting on how you could have done that problem better. That was a big part of our process.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the sheet. It's like, you only hit like maybe 70. You have 70 entries here. So really, it's not like a lot of, it's not a lot of entries.
Yeah. You see those posts, like I did like hundreds of leak code problems and like, I'm still like not feeling confident. It's just, we're smart, not hard. You just got to know exactly which topics to hit. And there's just a method to doing them effectively.
Yeah. And how quickly did you feel you were making progress? After like what problem did you feel like it started like clicking?
It wasn't necessarily a problem or pattern. It was just after I got my approach down. Explain like I'm 5, drawing things out. That's when it just clicked, where it doesn't matter after that, or it doesn't matter as much what the content or the problem was asking, as long as I had basic knowledge of what it was asking or the data structure it involved. But for me, the biggest thing was just formulating or crystallizing an approach to problem solving.
Right. And I think we kind of hit that around like week 4 or 5-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it did not take that long for us to actually get there.
Yeah.
And then, like we mentioned before, this carried over to like system design and everything else. So yeah, I guess I want you to describe, like, once you got the offers in, I want you to describe like how you're feeling. Were you like burnt out from all the prep work we were doing? Were you happy with the numbers and all that stuff? Yeah.
So also, before I go into that, I also want to make a shout out to Rora. They're the ones who handled my negotiations, and I went through them, and the biggest thing for me, like the pro that they provided, was that they gave me a lot of advice in terms of how to communicate with recruiters, and that kind of took the weight off of me in terms of I was able to just really focus on the studying. I was just focused on the interviews. That's it. Whereas they were handling and monitoring my communications and allowing me to negotiate. I knew I was going to negotiate optimally. I just needed to deliver and get at least 3 offers so we can have a decent negotiation. So they worked with me the whole time, and they eliminated a lot of my stress from that. And so they also helped me through the negotiation process after I got the offers. So in terms of the offers and the outcomes, so in terms of the numbers, I was looking for something that's comparable to like a PhD who just graduated. And I think I was very happy with that, because that's basically what I was able to achieve. But there were a couple of low balls. And I think that is a product of the fact that I had 4 years of experience from a startup,
Mm-hmm.
and not only that, but it was my startup.
Mm-hmm.
So there was apprehension, I think, from companies that
Mm-hmm.
they weren't really sure what those 4 years of work really meant.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, in my head, having put in like 60, 70-hour weeks
Mm-hmm.
consistently for that stretch, I felt that I should be considered more highly because of that,
Mm-hmm.
because of all the time I put in. And so there were companies who saw that, and those who didn't. Tesla being one of those, really, really liked that. And they were offering me a really great project and a position to lead as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just great to be in a position where I ended up getting into a bidding war,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just really nice to get to a point where multiple companies were interested, and they had to really bring their A game to in order to sign me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just validating for me, because I knew that I had put in the work,
Mm-hmm.
and I just didn't get it the first time around,
Mm-hmm.
and I was kind of just like just pushed around, and I kind of was just on their terms. But this time I felt like I did everything I could in my power, and that this whole process was going to end on my terms. And so I was really satisfied with that fact that no matter how much money I spent, with the coaching I got, with the negotiation help I got, with the resume writing help I got, job search help I got, counseling I got, like, it was very much worth it. I think it was about like, I don't know, $5 or $6 grand total. But the outcome that manifested after it, not even the salary that I got, it was just the level of recognition was everything for me. And so that's why I was really, really satisfied with it.
Yeah, and I remember like when you told me the numbers. I think you're making like you got offers for like 2.5 to 3 times what you were making at Goldman. I think that's about right.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And Goldman, like, normally they're not too competitive, but the fact that it was just like double, triple, it was just mind-boggling. But at the same time, I knew that that salary or compensation level was achievable. Like, you can't set ceilings for yourself. You got to know what's possible. These companies have a shit ton of money, and if you're deserving of that, they'll give it to you. But you just got to show them where your value is. And so, yeah, the fact that I wasn't getting what I wanted or what I expected, I just more fire to the flame, more fuel to the fire, really. And so, yeah, it was great to see that result.
Yeah, and the way you talk about it, it's like I think the whole like the results once you got them, you were like pretty damn happy. I think.
Yeah, my like giga goal was to just end up at like Google and have that salary. But even then, I realized that what it was for me is just I wanted to get that number, that compensation, and like a Google or Fang level compensation that's very competitive. But then I realized that at Box right now, I'm very happy because it's a place where I'm really truly celebrated, and that I could grow, where they value education and mentorship, and so that's been a big source of happiness and satisfaction for me. Yeah. So yeah, it's been a great ROI with this whole process.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I mean, if it were up to me, I would do the same thing that you did. Hire a negotiation service because I'll tell you, I'm very bad at that. But like you said, like the investment you put in is like way less than what you were getting out. The improvements in like the salary. I think they ended up like bumping up your offer by like 50K, I think, or something like that.
I think they bumped it. Let me think. So 50, 60 for the compensation, the yearly.
Yep.
But then they got an extra like sizable bonus. And then the sizable bonus was basically a difference of like 100K. So total 100K.
Holy crap. Yeah.
Swing.
No, sorry, did I interrupted you?
No. Yeah, that's basically the punchline.
Jesus. Yeah, I you know what? Next time I do this, I'm gonna get negotiation service myself. But yeah, yeah,
easily. Rora.com, I think. Shout out, but like Crystal Amir, it really took care of me, and they really watched over me every step of the way, and so yeah, I recommend it to anyone.
All right. And I kind of want to talk to wrap things up, like why you decided to pick Box over Tesla over Nerdwallet. You mentioned briefly that it's about like the responsibilities that they gave you and that they valued you. But I feel like you can get that at a lot of different companies. Why did you feel like Nerdwallet and Tesla didn't give that to you, or what were they lacking?
Yeah, so with Nerdwallet, I felt like it was just mainly the tech stack. They were wanting to lean more towards the front end. I'm more of a generalist person, so that's why it wasn't as attractive to me. And also their compensation ceiling, there definitely was a ceiling for them. Of course, being pre-IPO, it kind of made sense. And then Tesla was very enticing. But they wanted me to work on a major project related to their like superchargers and pricing. And that was really cool in my mind. It's just that the team was a bit too young for me, and I was required to lead it. And so I wanted to be under more senior folks, especially the fact that I hadn't really gotten too much mentorship up until this point in my career. I really haven't been in just a cave by myself coding really. So that was really important to me. And then Box really checked off all the boxes with the mentorship, the culture. The culture is really strong. I wanted to work in an office, not be remote, and they support that 100%. And the project, I was going to be placed as a DevOps, but I didn't really care about that. Coming from the SWE world, I was just going to be working as a SWE within a DevOps team that was trying to become more devy, I guess. And so they gave me a unique position where I could sort of revamp the team and really be a major leader in it, in terms of the standards, practices, and that just required a lot of my experience that a lot of people, I guess, it's kind of hard to get unless you're been in a startup. So my manager really made a push to give me a lot of responsibilities, for which he was looking for exactly someone to do that. So then I realized that it was kind of clear, even though I wasn't expecting it. But then it became clear after a couple of days of thinking that my career, it seems like it's going to best fit a Box.
Yeah. So the takeaway is that it wasn't about like the money or the compensation or the prestige. It was more so if it fit with like your beliefs in your career and the life that you wanted.
Yeah, the life that I wanted, the people I wanted to be around.
Hmm.
So, like, one main tenet of my life has been just surround yourself with people you want to be like, and so that was a major reason why I chose Fox.
Yeah, and that's a really good lesson. I think too many people put like an emphasis on the total compensation, but I think you're putting emphasis on like the people that you work with.
I was really close to accepting Tesla. I was really close to accepting it for the prestige, of course, with it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I really had to take a moment to think it through and what's the smart decision,
Hmm.
um, uh, and not a emotional decision. And so I dealt with that a lot, but I'm glad that I went with the smart decision at the end.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's good to hear. Like you definitely seem pretty happy about it too, even talking to you right now. But I guess before like we sign off on this, like, are there any last minute shout outs, tips, or anything that you want to talk about before that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say put the time in, but also don't be by yourself about it. Like, get help and just you wanna build a team. As a developer, it's gonna require an investment, a financial investment of maybe 5 grand,
Hmm.
but the difference in the ROI you're gonna get out of it is immense. So
Hmm.
5 grand is really not too much. And so get your negotiation coach, get your technical interview coach. I had someone help me for my resume.
Hmm.
Also, someone helped me through getting interviews through LinkedIn. So
Hmm.
I had a team supporting me, and so I think that would be my one main thing: get your team, and then all of you guys will be aligned to basically get you the best, the optimal job that you truly deserve.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I think that too many people try to do it alone, and they don't realize that a lot of the people who succeed have a lot of help behind them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, this was the work of about 10 people,
Mm.
10 or so people, so a handful of people. And so it wasn't just me. I was just there taking advice and doing the interviews. But to get the compensations and the job roles and everything, it took a team to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, and so yeah, I guess that's it from me. And I think that's a very good lesson to walk away from this conversation with. It's like just don't do everything on your own. And I've heard that multiple times from a lot of my clients who like struggle with like the interview loneliness essentially, and they had like a
Yeah.
a support team in their own personal life, like handling the day to day stuff as well. So with that, I
Yep.
think we've come to the interview. Any final thoughts?
Nope.
Yeah.
Just reach. Just go for it.
All right, for sure. All right, thanks for agreeing to do the interview, man, and best of luck at Vox. Hope reach out. Don't be a stranger, man.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate all the work you put into.
All right, take care, man.
Take care.
All right, bye.